Hey everybody, the day's finally here. Welcome to Testnet Saturday. Alright, we finally made it, and I've got my celebration glasses on. And first of all, thanks everybody for sticking with me all the way to get here. It's going to be a fun, fairly relaxed day. Hopefully I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of coding or anything more difficult than just collecting issues from everybody as they arise, testing everything out, paying attention to the logs, and basically writing down what we see to prepare us for our next sprint. But if we do run into anything world-ending, I'll dive in and do a quick fix, things like that. So at the top of the chat, there's a pinned document for today, which you can see right here. And if you open that up, it gives you all the instructions you need to get involved. We have 2 test servers that I'm running. If anybody wants to share, their test servers as well, feel free. Of course, if you put it in there, people are going to sign up, so just bear that in mind. One other thing is we don't have moderation controls in, so please be kind to everybody. Don't make anything that I'm going to regret having show up on the stream or anything like that. Really asking y'all to respect that part of the situation. Eric, the whole sign-up flow is actually just temporary, so, yeah. So anyway, what we're going to be doing here is just making sure that notifications get delivered, that upvotes show up, that posts show up, and so on and so on. So jump on a server, join some of the communities so you can actually get connected to people, and let's try things out. One other thing to keep in mind is that it's testnet. Any data that's on the test servers, the Test Citizen servers, will get nuked. Something else to keep in mind is that breaking changes may come after this. In fact, I'm already thinking about changing some of the HTTP routes. So if you're deploying a server or signing up an account and taking part in this, just bear in mind that this is all temporary. We're going to nuke everything before we actually launch the beta, so don't get too invested in whatever network you're building or whatever content you publish. This is not the live system yet, and I know how it is. Sometimes you spend some time getting everything going, and then to lose all that could be kind of like, my lost time investment, how dare you. And I just want to be very clear to everybody, this is all temporary. It will get deleted and then restarted afterwards. Snowcode just asked, said they just came on the channel. Can somebody explain to me what the whole thing is? I wish I had the time to have prepped a really nice little presentation for you, but I don't, so I'll just tell you. CTZN is, here's the spiel I got. It's a decentralized social networking mad science experiment that is focused on making the algorithms, the communities, the servers, and the applications fundamentally open. And we are today testing out a sort of core, a sort of MVP of the software to make sure that it works correctly. What we've accomplished so far is we've got the sort of multiple server design working with a simple kind of social media system. where you can follow people, you can create communities, you can join and leave those communities, you can post on your own feed or in those communities, and you can vote and reply to things. And that includes things like notifications, setting your avatar, so all the kind of basics of a social network. And the design of this thing is not federated, it's a distributed system. It uses a data mesh in the background called the Hypercore protocol. It's not a blockchain. It's kind of more similar to BitTorrent. And it uses that data mesh to synchronize the data sets between the servers. And so that has an advantage of basically creating a very flexible system. The wire protocol, so to speak, the communication between servers is mostly very unopinionated. And the design of it is we are coming at it from what we call, or what I call, political, political experience design. We think very, very specifically about how we organize the kind of political power of individuals in the system. And I'll answer your question in a second, Xscale. This is the breakdown currently of the system. You have communities, users, servers, and applications. They are all separate entities. Servers handle hosting. Users own their data. That's where all the content lives. Communities basically aggregate or kind of gather together user data or user content in a somewhat moderated form. And then the applications communicate with the servers. And these users and these communities can actually switch between servers in something called rehoming, which we haven't implemented yet, but we've got mostly spec'd out. So that's what Citizen is. Part of what you're going to be seeing today has some temporary UIs, things like the, sign up and the kind of onboarding flow is very just like, hey, here you are, knock yourself out. So if you look Xscale in the HackMD, we have at least one community listed here. So after you've signed up, you'd want to click on this link, and then you can join it from there, and then it'll show up in your list of communities. Aww. If you're new to Citizen, something else that's somewhat interesting to know is that the kind of flow of information is a kind of a unique system. There is no such thing as like the network view. So, like in Twitter or something like that, it's all on Twitter. So if somebody @s you or somebody follows you, you're always going to see it because it's all what we consider one community. So we have sort of changed that model where if you're in a community, you're going to be able to see everything. You'll get notifications for everything that happens in the community. All the posts will show up in your feed in that community. Anybody in the community can reply to anybody else in the community when they post to that community. But so a community sort of behaves like a Twitter would. But you can be a part of multiple communities, and they're kind of contained to themselves. The other thing is what we call self-posts. And self-posts aren't in a community, you're just posting to your own feed. And the way those work is you can only interact with a self-post if the author of the self-post follows you. And that rule exists for a couple of reasons. One is to just make sure that the kind of open network doesn't get bogged down with, bad behavior. So in the open network, you're able to talk to each other, but only if you have a pre-existing relationship with each other. And if you want to find people, or if the open network, somebody doesn't follow a lot of people, you got to find them through a community, which is a moderated space. But the other reason for that is that because the system is decentralized, unless a user is following you, they're not going to see what you do. So that's why you can only vote on or reply to a post by somebody that follows you, because otherwise they wouldn't see your activity. So Xscale, like I said, today is a testing day, so you may be hitting our first bug. Snow Code, I'll answer your question real quick. There's a pinned link in the chat to HackMD, and you can find a link to how to create your own server. Now, Xscale, you say it's loading infinitely. Tell me, what is loading infinitely? Is it when you click on the link to the friends? Are you able to get to this screen here? In Xscale, what we're doing right now is exactly what I want to do. I want people to tell me if you're running into weirdness, running into any bugs, and we're just going to step through what's going on together so that I can figure out what's breaking and what's working. So this is kind of like a group QA session. Okay, let's see here. Miguel, you're saying you're getting sluggishness. If you could, watch my stream here and let me know if you're getting comparable performance or worse performance. The only advantage I should have in terms of loading speed is that the testnet servers are in Central America. Central USA, like Iowa, I think. And so I'm a little closer. Okay, thanks, Andrew. So that one would be size limit on profile pics. Yours is much worse. That's interesting. If it's working adequately for me, try changing your profile pic to something smaller, but I would be surprised if that would have the effect of slowing everything down. I would also be surprised if Miguel, I would be surprised if simply latency over the oceans would be enough to slow it down as much as you're saying, but it certainly could. Xscale, could you tell me more about what's loading infinitely? And Paul Rodwell, which community did you try to join? And what is your server compared to that community? Gonna be a whole lot of this action, so again, if we have bugs or things failing to work, no big deal. That's exactly what today is for. Okay, Ryan or Paul Rodwell, can you tell me what... Oh, I forgot. YouTube chat is probably going to filter out things that look like URLs, so you're going to have to try to obscure them. Sorry about that. So 18 seconds to load home from the edit profile page. That's very surprising. So Paul, you're trying to join the friends at test 1 using an account on test 2. Why don't I give that a shot? Before I do it, I'm going to modify the citizenry front end to make sure that it's giving us all the information we can possibly use. Gonna be honest, typing while these glasses are on my face make it a little harder. Just a little bit. Okay, so we're logging errors, so that's good. And on-click join and on-click leave. Just gonna stick on them. Spinner. Okay. Trying to join friends community on test 1 from a user on the Electro Pizza server. So it sounds like we have some distributed joining failures. I would bet, that's interesting though. One thing to ask is Citizen Electro Pizza, okay, dig-x citizen.electro.pizza. Did Electro Pizza set up its reverse DNS? It didn't. Wait, no, wait. Dig-x. It did, okay. All right. So as soon as I get a message of that deployed, I'm going to try it. Let me see if I get any of these errors if I try to log out and then log back in. No? Yeah, okay, Miguel, if you're using an ad blocker, could you check for me if that's what's causing it? Because I ran into a situation where an ad blocker would actually stop the WebSocket connection from being created. And I'm going to try doing a remote join from... That count different? Interesting. Are there duplicates? No. Okay, that's an interesting bug. The member count differs depending on whether you're logged in or out. Okay, just say so the servers and the applications are separate. So once you've got your server up, go to citizenry.com, which is right here. And you sign up for your own server through it. Citizenry.com is currently just a single-page application. Yeah, so Miguel, confirm for me whether or not your WebSocket connection is getting filtered by your by like an ad blocker or something. Okay, so I'm going to try. Interesting. Yeah, it looks like our remote joining protocol is acting up. Not only is it not working, but it's not giving us an error, which I find to be interesting. There are multiple communities. There's just no community discovery right now. If you go to like somebody's profile, you should see some of the communities they're a part of. Yeah, okay, that's a problem that the ad blocker is doing that. I'm not sure how we're going to deal with that. If the ad blocker stops WebSocket connections to a remote server, then our applications are going to need to proxy all the traffic, which is costly to say the least. Let's see what happens. What is the response value here? Now it seems to think it worked. Okay, that's interesting. So this must be related to the member count being wrong when I'm logged into a different server. Okay. Can't seem to be able to join the friends. Yeah, okay, give me a second. I think I know what might be going on here. I think the remote joining is actually working because the records were created. But I think it's connected to the fact that for some reason I'm seeing the wrong member count whenever I'm looking at a community that is not on my home server when I'm logged in. So like I'm logged into test 2 right now, and I'm looking at a community that's test 1, and it only reports 10 members. So let's do a little debugging. So if I go to test1.citizen.network, citizen, oh, interesting. Does list members even have an HTTP endpoint? It does, I think. Okay. Citizen members friends at test1.citizen.network. Yeah, this is wrong. So it's the HTTP endpoint that's acting up. I think it's time for that to come off. little hard to see while I'm working. So why would this be wrong? Let's take a look at its members records. Hyper friends citizen.network member. User table not found. User table not found. Oh, table. Citizen.network community member. Huh. Do I have a limit being applied, perhaps? I bet I have a limit being applied. Aha! That's what's happening. That's what's happening. And we also, do we stop? Okay. We need to turn off that default limit. At least for now. So that was a subtle one, but makes sense. Okay. That's interesting. Well, that's installing. I'm gonna grab something. Ordered some torchies. Hope y'all don't mind. Okay. So I didn't get chips today, but I would go with Torchy's queso for sure. Their queso is really good. Okay, so now it works. So everybody let me know if you're now showing up correctly joined in communities. Now we're getting a spinner. I assume that's because content is still loading. So the ad blocker is just really screwing with you, huh? And you've got broken notifications. Kid's squirming around trying to get my attention. So now this is interesting. I wonder if I broke it whenever a limit is specified. No, it's just not. No, it's not a cores error, buddy. I'm sure that's not the problem. Otherwise it would load here. Okay. Yeah, so I fixed the problem where it was failing to load all of the members, and it was, as a result, not knowing that you were a member of the community. So that part's fixed. But this right here, it looks like we're failing to load the posts. I'm guessing there's some post in the feed which has like failed to sync and we're blocking on it or something like that. So I'm gonna have to stick some console.logs in there to figure that out. Miguel, you're saying you're still getting, let me jump into Firefox. That session may just be dead, so let me log in again. Does Firefox have a way to view So the cores complaint is actually just because the response isn't coming back. And so with no response header in the response, it will then just be like, oh, I guess it's a cores failure, but that's obviously not what's going on. In response. Interesting. Oh my goodness, kitty cat. Yeah, it seems like the WebSockets are just not working in Firefox. I mean, they sort of are, because we're able to successfully resume a session. We're able to successfully log in. There it goes. This memberships list follows notifications that count. Something is still not totally working. It seems like list home feed is not getting called by Firefox at all. There should be no such thing as a locked account. Certainly haven't implemented anything like that. So I'm going to come back to the Firefox situation and first dig into the community situation. So I'm just getting straight up nothing from the test2 server now. Getting nothing for both. CPU load isn't a problem. Memory doesn't appear to be a problem either. So glad that that's not the problem. But we do seem to have an interesting situation now. Yeah, okay, so now I'm getting the full-on spinner. Interesting. What could be causing this? I wonder if it's possible if we're running out of connections. Yeah, I wonder if we're running out of file descriptors. I don't seem to have the ls of command. Kitty cat, I can't help you right now. So we're using 10,000 at the moment. Yeah, you're a kitty cat, I know. It doesn't look like we're hitting the limit, at least not presently, but that would be a dynamic situation. Yeah, I don't think that's what's happening. I think what's happening is, for some reason, Because like here we have the connection, we're getting the global spinner. We are getting some back and forth. What is that? Linux command. Watch. Okay, you gonna output. Maybe it's. There we go. So we're watching our file descriptor usage there to see if it pops off on us. Okay. So some of these are just not responding. And it looks like it might be list followers. Dark, you can create accounts. We're dealing with some issues that I'm trying to debug, but bear in mind that this is all the testnet, so none of this stuff is permanent. So okay, the current spinner condition that I'm hitting right now is that it's stuck on list followers. Kit, I can't right now. I can't right now, Kit. So it seems a whole lot like the issues we're running into here. Can we DDoS yet? You don't even need to DDoS. It doesn't work as it is. It looks like the situation we're running into here is basically failures of like swarming. Like I'm guessing, so like list followers, when it looks up the community indexes, it's asking data sets which are not hosted locally. It's asking your communities. And it seems to be stalling out on that. So I'm going to prove or disprove that real quick. FD count seems to be consistent, so that doesn't seem to be the issue. Just for the sake of certainty, let's increase the FD limit real fast. I guess we would have gotten this somewhere. I said, I love you, but I can't right now. All right. Eric, what community are you trying to join? Or what server are you trying to use, rather? No, you're bad. Get out of here. You try to use test 1, and you're trying to sign in. The stream latency got jacked back up to normal. And I can't change it now that we've started. Sorry, everybody. Oh, I'm in test 2 right now. Okay, interesting. Eric, what did you type in as your username? Did you use your email or did you use your Citizen ID? Because if you used your email, you might see what you're talking about. Now Kit thinks she wants to go outside, which is what she would normally do when I don't pay attention to her. But it's so cool, Kitty. You just gotta find a way to self-entertain. No, login doesn't require email. It requires your Citizen ID, which looks like an email. So it would be whatever your username is at test1.citizen.network. That's not great. Everything is suddenly working. And I'm 99% sure it's because I just restarted the servers, not because of anything else. I think we were having hyper sync issues. And it wasn't handling them gracefully, which is just a really bummer of a problem to run into because the sync issues seem to be due to some kind of problem where, like, a Hyper-V failed to load up or establish a good connection, and then it just kind of got into a state of like, well, can't fix this. And then, after that, it's like, well, okay, you need to you need to keep trying to fix this. And it put it into a stalled out condition where some of the responses aren't coming in. Okay, so I just restarted test 2, and now I'm getting the exact same issues. But I'm logged into my test 1 account. So there's a couple of interesting problems here. One is a lack of resiliency to nodes behaving poorly. If a node isn't working, yep, it was working great and then it stopped working. If I now restart this one, now we're broken again. So we've got some kind of a condition where it's possible to just sort of fail out wrongly. Well, it's currently depending on however hypercore reacts to the problem. I appreciate that, Miguel. Okay, that's interesting. Whoa. Thanks. We're getting some kind of situation where it's attempting to write to Hyper-Bs that it doesn't own. I'm not sure what that is. Yeah, so basically it just looks like networking failures at the hypercore level just are not handled gracefully. Like, everything was going great once I stopped trying to... Yeah, I know, right? Everything was going fine once I stopped trying to list followers from the community indexes, which was a remote database read. And then test 1 crashed, I believe because of this. So it restarted itself, and now it's failing to load anything. Yeah, I'm very curious to find out what's going on with the not writable error. Like, why is it thinking it needs to run the indexing process on Bs it doesn't own? So now that's fixed. So we're getting actually a fair amount of pretty actionable and useful information now. A lot of this really seems to come down to a few issues that we've got written here. This one got fixed. Better solution to limiting list calls over HTTP. We'll have to look into that, but not actually our biggest problem. The feed, writing to a feed that's not writable issue, that's an interesting one. Yeah, I think everything has gotten into a good state now. But the biggest problem we're running into at this stage is gracefully handling hypercore network failures. Okay, since the fires have been put out, I will eat my second taco as a reward. Now Firefox seems to be acting correctly as well. Okay. So now that we're in a happy state, let's just see if everything continues to function right. That was interesting. Smash that like button. Miguel, what's... Must be logged in. Miguel, what is the server that you are... I'm guessing test at Citizen... .hamnox.space is a community. Yeah, of course it is. So are you joining from... What server are you joining from? You're in test 2. Huh. Test at citizen.hamnox.space. That's interesting. Who is it? Is the owner of this server here by chance? Really wish this thing would let me change the stream latency. Okay, Melanie, could you tell me, for some reason, it is failing its reverse DNS lookup. Let's take a look at that flow real quick. So in communities remote join, it's going to do, or just in normal join, no, in remote join. Right here, it's going to try to do a reverse DNS. And for some reason, the WebSocket seems to think its remote address is a local host. Are you using any kind of reverse proxy or anything? What could you tell me a little bit about the setup that you have? Okay, so on that Nginx proxy, did you include all of the settings that I have in the setup document of, oh, hang on, is that everything? Yeah. For some reason, yours is not setting the remote address correctly, but mine is. Yeah, I don't know what could be causing that. Hey Jim, welcome, welcome. Yeah, Melanie, it sounds like something is going on with the proxy. Yeah, I'm inclined to think there would be some kind of header that might indicate what the correct IP address is. And we just need to check it. Eric, I don't know if, Twitter's trying to do Blue Sky right now, and I've offered to share everything that I'm doing here with them. If they are interested in using this technology, I'm not going to say no. Man, this stream latency is just the worst. So once the error conditions aren't happening, everything seems to be working just fine. It's probably not a firewall. Oh, are you using Docker, Melanie? It's not the firewall because otherwise we wouldn't even be seeing the connection. The problem is that basically the socket has a remote address field on it that we need to do a reverse DNS lookup on. And for some reason in Melanie's server, the IP address is showing localhost, or a local IP rather than the actual remote IP. And if you're using Docker, Melanie, that might be what it is. Now, that's not, obviously that's something that we ought to be able to handle. Okay. That's actually really helpful. I would bet money it's that. And so that's good because now I can test by setting up a Docker on my own. So as long as I can debug the thing, I'm happy. Tell you what else makes me happy is seeing the distributed communication occurring. That just is. Join was working before. Yeah, I'll have to look into it. There must be some kind of condition I can figure out as to why that would be happening. What have we done? Let's see if I can. Let's see what happens if I try. No, I tried this already. So Mike asks whether retweets will eventually be a thing. I don't know. I think if we do something like retweets, what it would actually be like is more like quote tweets. Because in Citizen, unlike Twitter, it's also like community scoped or like self, like you post to a space. You either post to a community or post to self. So if you're doing like a retweet, what you're really sort of doing is a cross post, where you're like taking a post that's already somewhere and then like probably taking it to another space. So it would probably be more like a quote tweet into a separate community. And then if there's something like a retweet, I think the way I would prefer to see that be done is like to have a kind of a custom community behavior. All right, thanks, Joshua. I'll check into that. Well, now that everything is not on fire, I started building a tech tree. So speaking of retweets, trying to kind of map out like what's next and what we're doing now. So we are currently on this. And this will need to be pretty soon. These two are a little bit far future. In terms of like base features, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, this is also a near future one. Meow meow meow. This is a near future. This is a relatively near future. Custom aggregators, I think, would be a really interesting thing to prioritize after we have everything stable. That would be something that's like similar to communities, but rather than it being a sort of a place where you post content, it would be specifically designed to aggregate content across multiple communities and self-posts. I had to think through what it would look like, but I really like the idea of custom aggregators. And it would not just be posts, it would also be things like users and communities. The idea being that like anything that's geared towards discovery or search would be powered by these kind of custom aggregators that users can make, same as creating a community. So like if we wanted to have a trending box over here or something, it would be built off of a user-run aggregator. It's like after after we have okay. Yeah, after we have the yeah, I might know what that voting issue is. But yeah, after we have communities and self-posts, it's kind of like we have objectives. If you break down the pieces of social media, you have, and we're trying to kind of like break down the pieces and move them into user land. So there's self-hosting, or kind of owning your data, which, you know, the whole individual user database and the ability to rehome is about. There's community moderation and curation, which is what the communities are about, content curation, moderation. There's applications, which is why we use this separate front end. And then there's the algorithms. And I feel like the algorithms is kind of the last piece of the puzzle to, like, before the whole thing is sort of broken down and moved out into user land. So that one seems like an interesting one to prioritize. On the application features front, it's kind of an interesting question, like whether or not we want to aggressively attack this area or not. The complexity of the software obviously increases the more kind of schemas and things that we introduce and more behaviors we introduce around them, which might mean that it's kind of unwise to be doing anything here prior to doing everything down here. We might need to kind of like make sure that everything is stable and working correctly before we jump into expanding on the kinds of applications it can run. But I would eventually like to make the citizen network's kind of core schema set handle pretty much most of the stuff you would do in a social network. Okay, well, this was a pretty successful test run here. I think we learned we learned important and valuable things here. You know, learning how the behavior breaks down once we started to kind of kick up activity was super useful. So I'm going to have to, over the next week, dive into the issues that we surfaced. And probably a big part of this will also be getting some kind of dashboards involved to give us some insight into what's occurring internally. Because like part of the problem that we were facing is like when the hypers weren't syncing. Yeah, network tooling and debugging, I agree. That'll probably be what I do as I'm trying to diagnose the hypercore network failures. Is I'll start by building in some tooling so I can get some insight into like what is going on with the swarm, why, you know, is something in a bad state, how many connections does everything have, etc. Okay, here's another example of a notification without the subject. Well, I got that in my notes to solve. Cool. Does anybody want to test anything else before we call it a successful Testnet Saturday? Whew, this thing lit on fire for a bit there. Don't you love fixing something live? I think after this I'm going to go day drink with my brother. Also, if anybody just has general questions or discussion they want to bring up, I'm down to chill for a little bit. That was fun. It was would have been more fun if it all worked perfectly, but again, I might be actually more nervous if everything worked perfectly. Surfacing issues is definitely, I mean, like, I feel like this was a total success. We managed to really do what we set out to do here. So I'm super happy about that. I guess, yeah, again, like if anybody wants to ask questions or spur up any general conversation, the stream lag is, a pain, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about what Eric was talking about with like Twitter and the relationship with Twitter. So, Twitter is pretty genuinely interested in decentralization, at least so far as how they've talked about like the Blue Sky project. It looks like what Twitter is going to be doing is changing they're at least going to experiment with changing their revenue model to be a subscription-based thing, which I'm guessing they're going to do and kind of like, something along the lines of their most popular, either it'll be something like if you reach a certain follow count, you have to start paying something, or it'll be something along the lines of like premium tweets. I don't know if that'll work or not. I also know that Jack Dorsey is like super interested in cryptocurrencies, so like he might kind of get in that jam. Plus one, everybody. That was fun. It was really fun to do this with y'all, and I consider myself really lucky that I have a group of people that would show up for this. So thank you so much for being a part of this. So anyway, I'm sort of tangentially involved with Blue Sky. I'm in the chat room. I've submitted a proposal, which was the design document inside of Citizen. But in the conversations I've had with them, I generally am just kind of like, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing Citizen right now, and I want to see this design through to the end because I think that I've got a design that's worth pursuing. That's the whole point of a mad science project, right? Is to pursue the spark that you have. And getting involved with Blue Sky right now, the way that they're approaching it is, understandably, they are trying to reach out to the broader decentralization community and get a broad base of feedback from everybody about how to design this thing. And they don't want, Twitter is pretty explicitly trying to avoid a situation where they just pick a winner or build something in-house, ignoring the decentralized, the kind of corpus of work in the decentralization community. All very understandable, but not something I'm particularly interested in because, there's a lot of projects. Yeah, there's a matrix somewhere where they all chat with each other. And they're all really good folks, and I'm like generally pretty supportive of what they're doing. But there's a lot of projects there with their own interests that they're pursuing, which makes it a somewhat political situation about how this ends up being done. And I don't want to be in part of that. I want to do my thing. I want to do it the way I've got in my head. So I've shared everything that I'm working on, and I'll continue to share anything as they're interested. But I just don't know if I'm a good fit for being involved with Blue Sky because I'm not really interested in working alongside with a broad base of different projects and things. I just want to do my thing. Would be more than happy to get involved, but even if they did, if they were to do it on my terms, it would be we're doing Citizen, which I think probably wouldn't play super well with folks. Who knows? So anyway, my jam is I'm just doing Citizen. Let's do this. If Twitter likes it and they decide to make Blue Sky use it, great. And if not, great. Blue Sky may end up being a great execution that moves faster and wins the day, and Citizen just becomes a footnote. That's fine. They could steal all the ideas but re-implement them. Also fine with me. I would be personally, at least, gratified by the impact that would have. So, it's co-opetition. Cooperative competition. Because as long as they don't just totally bungle it in some way. Like if they made a really crummy thing and that ended up becoming the solution to decentralization and social networking, I'd be a little bummed out. But that's the only failure mode that I really am worried about. And it's probably an unlikely turn of events. So, happy to help them out in whatever way I can. Sweet. And happy to have to be involved or not. It's all gravy to me. For that matter, Twitter is actually one of the few companies that I generally like. It's not like Facebook. If it was Facebook doing Blue Sky, I would be really frustrated constantly. I would hate everything about the project. I would hate the reputation they're bringing in. That would bum me out. Twitter, not so much. I like using Twitter. I generally like the vibes of the Twitter company, generally. I blame them for throwing away Vine. I think that was tragic. TikTok V1. That was a dumb move on their part. The WebSocket situation is interesting. The ad blockers filtering out the WebSocket connection is one of those things that's like, we can tell people to disable the... I mean, if we can detect it, we can have a little thing saying you gotta disable your ad blocker, but like, that sucks. That's not any good. The other thing to think about here is that citizenry being a pure SPA gives us some trouble around the kind of social media card and metadata. If we want to be serious about what we're doing here, we need things like the social media cards to work. It needs to be the kind of thing where if somebody shares, all the ad blockers so far do it. I saw uBlock do it, or if somebody reported uBlock doing it, and I use Adblocker Ultimate. They both did it. They blocked cross-origin WebSockets. I'm sure there's a really good reason why they do that, but it's also kind of like, come on. Anyway, the social media cards metadata is really important because you want to be able to like share a post on Citizen to like Twitter or in your Slack or whatever and have it. I care less about the Slack, but definitely like on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and have it like correctly populate the metadata about the post. uBlock Origin did do it. I thought somebody was saying that it did. Okay. So anyway, if we want to get the social metadata headers on the posts, being a pure SPA doesn't cut it. Citizenry might need to proxy. Because it needs to be able to generate the HTML correctly. So like the citizenry server actually has to do it. Okay, uBlock is behaving. Well, that'll be a tough call. Actually, based on what I was reading, first of all, you know, we turn off cores right now for Citizen servers, which is why I'm able to see like people's profile pics and stuff. But the other thing that's going on here is like the WebSockets apparently don't have cores. There's a single origin policy is not enforced as. Okay, good to hear about that about uBlock, or NewBlock, or whatever you say that. New. Oh, what else? This is sort of a topic of discussion right now. Got a roadmap. What of these do y'all feel like we ought to be thinking about most? You know, what application features, or one that's not up here? Or just anything on the tech tree. Does anybody have any thoughts about tech tree additions? It's supposed to be somewhat high level, you know. So like some things are not on here just because it's kind of like edit post isn't on here because that's just something that's really just part of the citizen core item. Posting images. I think yes. I mean, I can make the argument for why text only is, you know, no, you gotta be able to post images and videos and things. So I consider that to be just core. Yeah. Sorry, getting an influx of chat here. So yeah, let's just kind of consider like media in general to be just citizen core, being able to post media. We'll get there eventually. Given the state of gestures that everything, moderation seems huge. Agree, which is why that is got the bold border there. That's one that we got to just spend some time investing in heavily. Basically, even questionable whether or not that ought to be outside of core. What does forums encompass? Forums would be the kind of traditional, like discuss or like GitHub issues. You know, just like creating a topic and then having a feed of it. You know, so it's like different than the kind of like microblogging format. More just kind of like open general discussions, which I think would be a useful thing to have in the ecosystem. Option for private communities. I agree about that. Where does that fit in the tech tree? That might be protocol. Why don't we just call that protocol? Might actually be an application feature. You know, whatever. Melody wants to dig more into what parts are usable purely from the data mesh. Yeah. A lot is. sort of just currently the biggest binding to the non-data mesh is just the use of DNS IDs. I'm curious about the difference in topology between servers and clients. Wouldn't it make sense to use stun turn ice to make fully connected graph servers? So like servers, we have our own protocol for arranging connections, which is called Hyperswarm. So basically the equivalent of stun, turn, and ice are in use amongst servers. Stun, turn, and ice, and basically all of the WebRTC stack are kind of a pain to use on the server side, and that's why we don't use them. Yeah, rehoming is pretty high on the list of to-dos. Private communities overlaps a bit with DMs. That's exactly why I was kind of debating whether or not private communities is a application feature or a protocol thing. Oh my goodness. Is the rehoming feature in place? Now that there are several servers, that might be an interesting thing to try out. It is not in place yet. So that's, if it were, we would be testing it out today, but it's not done yet. Yeah, I mean, you know, identities are a combination, an overlapping combination of public keys and DNS IDs, which is how rehoming is possible. All the data is referencing the kind of crypto IDs, but you need a mechanism for short names. And you're either going to be, to do that, you're either going to be using DNS or you're going to be using a blockchain equivalent of DNS. And I just don't really want to use a blockchain solution. I might be amenable to a blockchain solution once, like, Ethereum moves to proof of stake. I might be open to, like, ENS. But you have to have a registry somewhere. For me, honestly, I understand why some people are concerned about the kind of power that DNS has. In my opinion, the ability to rehome is a pretty good vanguard against it's a good constraint against DNS authority abuses. So for me, actually, my biggest complaint about DNS is just the usability of the system. It's just kind of a pain to set up. The average user can't do it. That sucks. If there were a much more approachable solution, and also, like, you know, having to do user IDs blank at blank kind of sucks as well. It would be really nice if every user could have a short name that doesn't involve a at symbol in it. But I just don't know how to do that. I can also imagine something like pages. So Melanie is pointing out that currently communities are sort of mashing up two different ideas: aggregation of content and aggregation of users. And I agree, which is why this idea I have on the list of custom aggregators, which would be like a kind of a variation of communities that is designed to do aggregation in a different way. One that kind of like, because communities are very much like subreddits. They're a place where you post content. And an aggregator would be separate. It would be purely something which accumulates content potentially from multiple communities or from multiple users. It could be users that it's aggregating, it could be communities, it could be content, etc. The idea of an aggregator is to act as something which spans the entire network, doesn't necessarily have a membership. It might be designed in such a way that it's like attached to a community to like, and like uses the rules of the community to drive the aggregator. So like, for instance, I might create a community that manages an aggregator. But I'm in agreement that like communities are missing something fundamental that we need to kind of like introduce, and that's what the idea of having user aggregators will be. I'm gonna call these user aggregators. Or user run aggregators. This one right here, that's basically just hyper hosting. So hyperdrives and Hyper-B is sort of a generic hyperdrive and Hyper-B host. Ooh, I got another category to add. Gotta make it look good. Gotta make it sexy or you're not gonna eat. Alright. Commerce. DIDs are basically a blockchain solution. I can maybe imagine us getting DIDs involved at some point, but I'm just not sure at this stage. I don't necessarily, I have not yet seen any kind of strong argument for what it would add to Citizen at this stage. So until I kind of get some sense of like why DIDs would be useful to us, I'm not really inclined to do it. So this is one where having the servers be able to have the users subscribe or like pay for resources, which I think is going to be the economic model for how Citizen servers and Citizen, in general, supports itself. It is free tier, paid tier for the users to the servers, which is part of why ideas like the files and database hosting are in there to kind of give generic utility, similar to like what Google Drive does or Dropbox. I mean, gradually this whole thing should be kind of a platform for lots of different applications, so getting users to pay for their cloud usage would help keep the network alive, and so that's that there. And then maybe crypto payments at some point. I heard about Mastodon, though I'm not a user of it, but from your diagram, both concepts seem similar. How is Citizen different? They are similar. It's kind of like, what's the difference between Mastodon and Diaspora? They're similar, but they do different things. They're designed differently, etc. That's probably the simplest way to explain it. It's just we take a different design approach. Mastodon, yeah, I mean, I could talk about some of the details of like why I'm not a total fan of Mastodon's design. The highest level difference, though, is that we use the data mesh of Hypercore protocol to sync between things, whereas Mastodon uses a push-based federation model, which I think the data mesh is going to be more flexible and easier to work with in the long run. Also have a very different approach to data schemas. Mastodon is sort of using this RDF model that's geared towards sort of free extensibility. And I disagree with that. I think that decentralized networking protocols need to have very, very tightly defined schemas. And so I've taken a very different approach on that as well. There are ways for people to introduce new schemas, but when you do that, it's a new kind of data. I've talked in some previous streams about why I think that, but I just don't think you can have sort of freely extensible schemas and have a consistent experience for people. If the message can have random fields on it that your client doesn't understand, it's the kind of thing like I just posted a post with an image in it. Did you see the image? And somebody else is like, no. Well, it turns out that their version of the software doesn't support that extension with the images on it. Well, that's a terrible user experience. So we need strict consistency of schema design in the network. Otherwise, users will just have a really bad experience. And that's what this one is about right here, is opening up the doorway to having new application schemas that are not kind of Citizen's core schemas get introduced. But we may not be able to really effectively do custom application schemas until advanced rule definitions are supported, because schemas require some amount of business logic for like how they're supposed to be indexed and what have you. And so if users can't kind of define those indexing behaviors, the custom schemas may not be super useful. But we may find other ways to deal with that, like heuristics for if you have a content type that behaves similarly to like how Citizens posts do, you might be able to say, okay, this schema follows that blank indexing protocol, similar things like that. Those are probably a little more far future. Even forums might be kind of far future. So bold border means immediate priority. Sort of light background means far future. Okay. Testnet Saturday, success. Thank you everybody so much for joining in. Really successful today. Really good information we got out of this. Just did exactly what we needed, so I'm really pleased about that, and I'm really thankful for everybody participating and helping out with this. Going to dive into fixing up some of the issues we saw. Getting, realistically speaking, everything with a dark border here really needs to be done before the beta is launched. I would love to say the beta is going to be in like 2 weeks or something like that, but realistically speaking, it's going to be longer. So, hopefully, let's see where we're at the end of the month. It's February 13th right now. We got about 2 more weeks. I don't know. This may be a January, February, March, mid-March beta release. Because we gotta get all the basics solid, and we gotta get the gotta get the basics solid. Gotta get the and there's lots of UI details to get done. Things like the onboarding flow needs to be solid. Things like that. So I don't want us to sit on our hands for even a second. So we'll launch as soon as we're ready with a good MVP feature set, but we need to get there. Okay. Well, I'm gonna go chill with my brother. Yeah. Go hang with my bros. Daft Punk. If I was friends with Daft Punk, I don't know if I would need to be doing this much work. I might just be partying somewhere. Nah, I'd probably still be doing this. All right, well, have a great rest of your weekend, everybody. And I need to handle a few kind of chores on Monday, so I'll probably be starting. Either I won't stream on Monday, or I'll start a little bit late. But we'll kick off this next week, fixing everything we learned here. Thanks, Jerry. Glad you like it. Hyper Beam is pretty cool. All right. Later, everybody.
Citizen.